Have you ever watched a storm from a distance? Not in fear, but in stillness. You see the thrashing waves, you hear the chaotic wind, but you are standing on solid ground. This is the inner posture I invite you to find when you witness the fury of another. That fury, that rage you see, it is not about you. It is the sound of a game of shadows collapsing upon itself. A game that failed because they forgot a simple, ancient truth. The strategies of the mind are no match for the integrity of the heart. They played a game thinking they were in control, weaving a net of illusions, pulling strings they believed were invisible. But a life built on illusion is a house with no foundation. It may stand for a season, seeming strong, but eventually the ground of truth shifts, and the structure falls. What is left in the rubble is not victory, but the profound emptiness of their own spirit. The anger you witness is their refusal to look at this emptiness. They miscalculated your spirit. That is the truth that burns them. They saw your stillness and called it weakness. They saw your heart's loyalty and called it foolishness. They mistook the ocean's depth for a shallow puddle they could easily cross. They could not imagine that you would simply walk away from the chaos, that you would choose the quiet path of truth. They did not anticipate your own evolution, because your inner light revealed the darkness of their game, and so their plan did not just unravel, it returned to them. The energy they sent out came back, magnified. Those who live in such deep illusion are terrified of mirrors. They cannot bear to see their own reflection. They want others to carry the weight of their own fragmented self. This is the source of all manipulations, an inability to face the vast silence within. So when you rise, when you reclaim your own sacred space, they do not feel relieved. They feel seen. And this exposure feels like an attack, because the one outcome they counted on, you remaining broken, did not happen. You chose to heal, and your healing became, in their eyes, their defeat. The fire they carry now has nothing to do with you. It is the fire of the shame they refuse to hold. It is the fire of a crumbling kingdom of control. You have become a mirror, not because you intended to reflect their flaws, but because you chose to polish your own soul until it shined with truth, and that light is what eats at them. You did not seek revenge. You chose wholeness. You simply walked away with the quiet dignity of a mountain that refuses to partake in the wind's battle. And now they are left alone in the storm they created. They play short games of the mind, not understanding that life is a long, flowing river. But peace is not found by damming the river. It is found by flowing with the truth. That is why they are so restless. Not because you wounded them, but because your spirit, they could not break it. There is a profound teaching in stepping away from a drama that was never meant to be your path. It disturbs the very structure of the illusion. It forces them to confront a reality that power does not come from controlling others. It flows from a connection to one's own source. And you, in your calm retreat, now embody this truth. Your serenity is a threat to their delusion. Your refusal to fight is the loudest sound they have ever heard. Because silence has a weight. It has the weight of a mountain. Let them be angry. That anger is just fear wearing a mask of fire. It is the fear of being seen for what they are. The fear of being irrelevant now that the connection is severed. The fear of their own emptiness. That fear is their own spiritual work. It is the prison they have built for themselves, and only they hold the key. You do not have to stand at the gates. You do not have to prove anything. You have already won, not by mastering their game, but by choosing to step off the board entirely. That is strength. That is clarity. That is the path. They thought the journey was about power over another. You have shown them it is about the courage to be true to oneself. They failed, not because you defeated them, but because they betrayed their own potential for peace. And they must live with that echo. You, on the other hand, are free, not just from them, but from the part of yourself that once believed their chaos was your home. And this freedom, this evolution, is a wisdom they cannot grasp, for it is earned through a humility they have not yet cultivated. Let them spiral. Let them rage. You have a soul to tend to, a garden to water. They mistook the nature of your energy. They saw your kindness as weakness. This was their first and most profound misunderstanding. They believed your compassion was a crack in your foundation, not the very bedrock of your strength. In our tradition, true strength is not expressed through force, but through restraint. It is the power of the water which yields yet overcomes all things. Your patience was not passivity, it was the deep, slow breath of one who observes before acting. They measure the world by their own fragmented spirit. They assume every heart beats with the same rhythm of strategy and deceit. So when they encounter a soul that is genuine, one that offers its light without calculation, they do not know what it is. And instead of honoring it, they seek to possess it. They took your grace as permission. They believed your forgiveness meant they could continue to draw from your well without ever replenishing it. They tried to understand a deep soul through the shallow lens of power. But kindness is not weakness. It is a conscious choice. It is strength held in loving hands. It is the discipline to offer peace when you could summon a storm. And for a long time, you chose peace, not from fear, but from a profound hope that they would recognize something true and choose to meet you in that space of clarity. That is not weakness, that is faith. And it is a rare element, so you stayed longer than your spirit wished. You offered explanations to a mind that was not listening. You poured light into a space that could not hold it. And they used this against you. They told themselves a story that you were naive, that you were dependent. A story that made them feel in control. But then came the moment they never foresaw. The moment the seasons changed within you. When your heart, having given all it could, finally chose to honor itself. And you did not become a storm. You did not descend to their frequency. You simply became the mountain. Unmoving. Silent. You stopped showing up in their drama. You reclaimed the access to your own inner world. And that act, that simple act of self-honor, shattered them. Because the one thing a restless spirit cannot handle is losing the source of stillness they thought they could break forever. The game only works if both players remain on the board. You picked up your own heart and quietly walked away, with the dignity of one who has nothing left to prove. Now they rage, not because you did something wrong to them, but because you finally did something right for you. When you stopped meeting their chaos with your calm, you collapsed their entire reality. You were never weak, you were just kind. And they mistook that sacred offering for something they could dominate. They are not upset that you failed them. They are upset that you have risen, because your strength revealed their fragility, because your growth illuminated their stagnation, and because your silence now echoes with a truth louder than all their noise. They are not angry at you. They are angry at themselves, for they had something true, and they chose illusion instead. That is the great sorrow of those who live by deceit. They destroy the very bridges that could have led them home. Your growth revealed their inner landscape. That is why they cannot find peace in your presence. Imagine you were both living in a valley shrouded in mist. A mist of confusion they helped sustain. Their power existed only as long as you doubted the sun. As long as you were lost in the fog of their narrative, they could define the path. They told themselves you needed them, that their distorted view was the only view. But you started to awaken. A seed of awareness began to sprout, and once you begin to wake, the very structure of the dream starts to dissolve. They built a small world for you, one where your light was kept dim, under layers of self, doubt and fear. This was not always a conscious act, but an instinct born of their own inner emptiness. They needed you to stay small, because if you ever saw yourself in your true light, it would reveal how hollow their own power truly was. And then it happened. Quietly at first, you began to create space, the space between breaths. You stopped reacting. You stopped rushing to fill the silence with explanations. You became still, a mountain of quiet observation. And this stillness terrified them, because the more grounded you became, the more the ground beneath them began to shake. The spell was breaking. Growth does not only heal you, It brings light, and light illuminates everything. As you evolved, you brought truth with you. Your calm presence exposed their chaos. Your newfound boundaries highlighted their trespasses. Your standards of peace unveiled their constant creation of conflict. You didn't have to say a word. Your very being, as someone who would no longer be diminished, became the confrontation. And they cannot bear to be seen. The story they told the world about you, the unstable one, the difficult one, no longer matched the energy you radiated. And this contrast became unbearable for them. Suddenly, they called you selfish. But you were not being selfish. You were being sacred with your energy. You were no longer offering your heart as a battlefield for their inner wars. Your silence grew louder than any words you had ever spoken, and it left them exposed, standing in a field of their own making. They never had power over you. They only had the power you gave them through your own self-doubt. Once you reclaimed your own knowing, the illusion vanished. They are not angry that you hurt them. They are enraged because your light showed them how they had been hurting themselves. But you did not grow for them. You did not grow for revenge. You grew for peace. You grew because your soul was tired of living in a cage to protect another's ego. You grew because you understood that your life was meant to be a journey of expansion, not survival. And in doing so, you broke the chain. They do not hate you because you lied. They hate you because you stopped believing theirs. And that is what they cannot forgive. It is not that you exposed them to the world, but that you forced them to face themselves. And now, every time they witness your peace, it is a reminder of the path they could have chosen. They lost something pure. Not because you took it, but because they gave it away. Your transformation did not just save you, it revealed them. Your silence is a deeper sound than their rage, and that is what unravels them. Understand this: a spirit accustomed to creating chaos depends on your reaction. They feed on your explanations, your pain, your anger. As long as you are engaged, you are still giving your energy. You are still in the shadow play. But when you become silent, not from defeat, but from deep clarity, they lose their source. They lose the illusion that they mattered more than your own peace. Your silence becomes a mirror they cannot break and cannot turn away from. They wish for you to become a storm, because then they could point and say, "You see, the chaos is in them." This is the way of the manipulator. They push and pull at your center until you stumble, and then they blame you for the fall. But when you refused to play, when you withdrew your precious emotional investment, you took away the very air they needed to fuel their fire. They did not expect your strength to appear as stillness, that your greatest act of power would be to turn and walk the other way, leaving a closed door behind you. They do not know how to be in such a quiet space. They understand only noise. Your silence is not an absence of words. It is the end of their chapter in your book, and that is unbearable for a soul who has built their identity on being the main character in another story. They are raging because they are now powerless. Your detachment communicates more than 1,000 arguments ever could. It says, without a single sound, "My peace is not up for negotiation. You no longer have access to my spirit." And that, more than any verbal confrontation, quiets them internally. It removes their false sense of superiority. It forces them to sit with the truth that they are no longer the center of your orbit. Silence confuses those who are used to harming without consequence. They expect a fight because a fight means you still care. But when you withdraw, it signals a truth that shakes them to their core. They no longer matter to your path. You had oceans of words you could have spoken, mountains of truth you could have revealed. But you have learned that not all ears are ready to hear. Some listen only to find ammunition, so you chose silence. Not from fear, but from a profound wisdom. You realized that the most powerful thing you could do was to conserve your own life force and walk away. And the great irony is that your silence is now the loudest thing in their life. It echoes in the void where your energy used to be. It follows them. They tell themselves stories that you are cold, that you have changed. But deep down, they know. Your silence was not sudden. It was earned. It was the final, compassionate act of a soul that had finally remembered its own worth. Let them rage. That is not your storm to calm. You do not need to defend your peace. In a world of constant noise, your stillness is your sanctuary. And for those who once thrived on your chaos, it is their greatest teaching. Their anger is a mask, and beneath the mask is shame, a shame that is consuming them from within. On the surface, you see the fire of rage, the arrows of blame, but behind all that noise is a truth they cannot bear to face. They know what they did. Shame does not scream like anger. It whispers in the quiet moments. It is the shadow that follows them when all distractions fade. But to admit shame is to admit fault. And for a spirit that has lived by deception, facing the truth of their own actions feels like self-annihilation. So they project it outward. They create an external enemy because the inner one is too terrifying to confront. You became a mirror of their lost integrity. That is the true problem. It is not what you did, but what you did not do. You did not lower yourself to their level. You did not play the game of revenge. And to a soul mired in its own self-loathing, seeing the person they harmed rise with grace is an unbearable sight. It forces them to feel everything they have been running from. Every time they think of you, they are not just remembering you. They are remembering their choice. And they are remembering what they lost. Not control, but your respect. They didn't just hurt a person. They hurt someone who saw the light in them when they could not see it themselves. They betrayed a heart that offered them sanctuary. The knowledge of this act is the deep wound. But they don't know how to heal it, so they cover it with the loud bandage of anger. They will paint themselves as the victim because it is easier than admitting they caused the wound. They will say you were too sensitive, too demanding, all to avoid the quiet, sickening feeling of regret that lives in their bones. But inside, where truth resides, they know. They know you were a gift to their path. They know they were not worthy of it. And they know they cannot go back. There is a reason they cannot let you go. It is because what they lost was not casual. It was real. And now they must sit with the reality of who they are without the reflection of your goodness in their life. That is where the shame breeds. They thought they were winning. But strength built on deceit always collapses into the very weakness it tried to hide. When you betray a soul that was true to you, you do not walk away clean. You carry the energy of that choice with you. You may never hear an apology, but do not mistake their outer noise for inner peace. There is a war inside them now, a war they must fight alone. And every time they see you growing, healing, embodying a peace they can no longer touch, it reminds them of the shame. You were supposed to remain broken. You were supposed to stay small so they could feel big. Let them rage. Let them project. The truth defends itself, and in time, their mask will crumble. For anger is a fire that burns itself out, but shame is a shadow that lingers. They ruin something beautiful, not by accident, but by choice. You, on the other hand, are free. You faced the pain and chose to rise. You let go, not because it didn't hurt, but because you knew your own spirit mattered more. You have taken ownership of your path. They are still running from theirs. And deep down, they do not hate you. They hate themselves for losing you. The anger you see is not power. It is the desperate rattling of an empty vessel. It is a mask for the shame that has been growing inside them. And the terrifying truth for them is that the mask is slipping. The quiet, piercing awareness that they have done this to themselves can no longer be drowned out by their own noise. You did not need to take revenge. Your own evolution, your stillness, your refusal to return to the chaos, this revealed they were never in control. It proved that your worth was never tied to their validation. So now they spiral, not because you have wronged them, but because you did not. You chose to rise, and this rising forces them to see the chasm between the person they pretended to be and the person you have truly become. The more they see you healing with grace, the more unbearable their own reflection is. They cannot stand who they are without your spirit to manipulate, without your heart to twist. The shame is rooted in this, not just that they hurt you, but that they lost the one person who saw the good in them when they could not see it themselves. This they will never say aloud. You were the safe harbor. You were the mirror that showed them their own potential. And instead of choosing to grow with you, they chose to attack the very source of their own possible healing. Growth requires a courage they did not possess. And so now, long after you have found your own path, they remain shackled in a prison of their own making. Their rage is a hollow sound because it is not built on truth. It is a scream designed to drown out the whisper that will forever haunt them. You lost something real, and you did it with your own hands. This is why they cannot stop the inner narrative about you. They are trying to outrun the shame by rewriting the past. But the truth does not change. You were loyal, and they were careless with your heart. They played a short-sighted game and lost someone they now realize they did not deserve. You did not need to ruin them. They are doing it to themselves. This invisible weight will only grow heavier, isolating them further, for they have not healed. They have not learned. They are still caught in the same loop, while you have stepped into a new season of your soul, a place they can never again access. Let your own peace be your closure. It is enough. For while they are trapped in a cycle of rage and regret, you are free. And that freedom is a quiet, profound justice. Let them wear their anger like armor. You know what lies beneath it. You have seen the truth, and you have risen from it. Rage is loud, but shame has a long memory.